It's one of the most vicious attacks ever caught on surveillance. A convenience store clerk repeatedly stabbed late one night in Georgia. At 10:17, the clerk, DK Chowdhury, is completely overpowered by the 6'2" attacker and shoved into a back storage area. Right here, you see the clerk kick a gun out of the assailant's hand, but the attacker quickly pulls a knife. Another security camera inside the store shows customers are totally unaware of the brutality going on in the back room. To keep the clerk quiet, the heartless killer duct tapes the poor man's mouth, then covers his nose to silence his last breath. DK Chowdhury never had a chance.
The medical examiner later testified that he would have been dead within a few minutes. But even if the wound was delivered in a hospital, it would have been very hard to save his life because of the amount of blood that he lost and how quickly he lost that blood.
Once DK is dead, the assailant scrambles between the back room and the front counter, and at one point actually tells customers to get out.
Ends up having some contact with them, talks to them, tells them the store is closed, there's been an emergency, and that they need to leave, and ultimately convinces them to leave. They don't realize what's happened. Customers in the store are confused, but they do ultimately leave and drive off.
The killer then gets to work, raiding the register, trying to open the safe. And then right here, you can see the perpetrator steal a roll of $500 a week for life, scratch-off lottery tickets. Then returns to the back room one last time, stuffs the loot into a bag right next to DK's dead body, and takes off. Moments later, another customer comes in.
He looks around, he notices there's money on the floor behind the register. Ultimately goes back and looks in the kitchen and sees the victim's body. Leaves the store without touching anything, calls 911.
County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Airport Road, 3385.
Airport Road?
Yeah, we just walked in the store and seen the guy down, the chains on the floor, looked like they'd been robbed.
Could you tell if he was injured at all?
I seen blood on the floor and he's down. I didn't walk back there and look. Okay. Ladies can go look.
At the request of the 911 operator, one of those customers, Melanie Brewer, goes back in and checks the victim just to make sure if he's breathing, if he needs medical care. And she can tell clearly without even touching the body that he's deceased and he's not breathing.
There's blood everywhere. He's hurt.
No, he's dead.
He's dead.
He's dead?
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness.
Cops look at surveillance video, but it's no help. Then there was the brutality of the attack.
It's so odd to hear of violent crimes in a convenience store because of the way the training is now. You're instructed just to, hand over whatever they want and get them out of the store as quick as you can. And in this case, you would think, even as dangerous as convenience store clerks and some of the stories that you read and see, I don't think he ever expected that, especially here, because, like I said, it's not a violent crime kind of area.
Lawmen had theories, but the picture didn't seem to add up.
Part of the initial discussion was trying to determine, is this really a robbery and a complete stranger, or is this someone the victim knows? And maybe the robbery is an afterthought, or the robbery is to make it look like it was a stranger to throw us off a little bit.
Then, the big break. Cops find a key clue right next to DK's dead body, a cell phone.
It was laying about even with his waist and slightly pushed up under one of the fryers in the kitchen. And so the initial thought was that that was the victim's phone.
But it turns out the phone doesn't belong to DK. Did the killer accidentally drop it during the attack? Could this be the break investigators need to bring the brutal killer to justice? As the brutality plays out in the back room, customers coming in and out of the store have no idea of the ugly, violent scene just feet away. During the struggle, the attacker drops a key piece of evidence, a cell phone. Investigators access the stored photos and are stunned by what they find. The menacing 6'2" savage killer who viciously beat the poor store clerk down is a woman.
What they found was photographs of Skyy Mims and her family, and nothing that appeared to be the victim or his family. And so they quickly determined that the suspect had actually dropped her cell phone at the scene, and that was our first big break in the investigation. They began a complete forensic examination of that phone at that point.
Skyy Mims, a striking 22-year-old model, dancer, and rapper.
When you don't want love, that's like my soul.
She recently moved to Atlanta with the dreams of hitting it big in the music biz. It didn't take cops in Georgia long to discover her. They got a phone tip about where she was staying.
U.S. Marshals Task Force began setting up surveillance on that house until they were able to determine, in fact, that she was home and go in and make the arrest.
They're greeted by a very agitated and very naked Skyy Mims.
When they go in and she's naked at the top of the staircase and is screaming, "Shoot me, shoot me, shoot me." And I can't imagine what the law enforcement officers were thinking when they finally got her arrested.
She's brought out to a patrol car, handcuffed, wrapped in a blanket. But somehow Skyy Mims slips out of the cuffs and the blanket.
Hey, you okay? You okay? Are you okay? Jeremy.
Go ahead.
She's doing something to herself. She took off our cuffs.
925, you're going to pull over.
You do that for her.
She taunts the cops with her Houdini act.
Drop the floor there to the right. Drop him. Don't move.
The naked Mims is recuffed, but this time also with leg shackles. Mims, who had been silent until now, suddenly mouths off.
Would you shoot me with a gun?
I can't hear you.
Tase me.
I wasn't there, so I can't tell you.
Do you have a gun on you?
Oh,
944, 961.
huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
If I attack you,
Disregard. 944, 964.
would you shoot me in my head?
Go ahead.
Why?
How far
That's not what I did.
are you from 919?
Once in an interrogation room, her actions get more bizarre. At times, she even seems amused. Things don't get much better during questioning.
Is there a reason you came down here? Your music?
No. What kind of shows do you have?
Music.
Music shows? Is that where you're singing or playing instruments or what?
Right.
And the other key question Skyy Mims refused to answer was why. Turns out, it was all about those lottery tickets. She thought winning the lottery was her ticket to financial security, so she could pursue her artistic career. A state shrink determines Skyy Mims isn't crazy, so she's charged with murder and put on trial. There is a pile of evidence against her. In addition to the terrifying stabbing, the surveillance video shows Mims coming in to case the store in a different outfit an hour before the attack. The gloves the killer wore have Mims' skin cells in them. Between her house and the car, cops found the knife with Chowdhury's blood on it and a roll of red duct tape, like that used to smother the victim. And finally, police find dozens of those $500 a week for life lottery tickets, already scratched off in search of the prize. Mims pleaded not guilty. During her trial, her odd behavior didn't change.
A lot of people got upset when she would come into the courtroom and blow kisses at people and make signs to some of her family that was there.
She would turn around and make gestures to members of the audience. She would make eye contact with the camera, make gestures to the camera, and that went on off and on during the week. She would laugh and even giggle at times during the trial. During witness questioning, if an answer she didn't like, she even laughed and giggled some during her own attorney's closing argument to the jury. And you could tell that that was not helping her with the jury in any way.
Turns out, that is a bit of an understatement. In a trial that went from opening statements to closing arguments in 5 days, deliberations took less than an hour.
We, the jury, find the defendant, count 1, malice, murder, guilty.
The defendant, who slipped her cuffs, smiled through interrogation, mugged for the camera, and laughed during testimony, stood stone-faced and unmoving as she was pronounced guilty of all 11 counts and then taken away without so much as a look back or a second thought for her victim, D.K. Chowdhury.